welcome back to the New Columbia Movement YouTube channel. I appreciate you all joining us tonight. This is going to be a new kind of format for us. We decided to go ahead and go forward with something that I'm a little bit excited for. We're still doing monthly roundtables, just to kind of bring on our best and our brightest to discuss and have a conversation about what's going on in the world, kind of do a review of the month, give our perspectives, because I think sometimes we can offer perspectives that you're not going to get from the typical pundits and the neocons, but also I think there's a lot more to gain from just being able to have conversations about this stuff, because not all of us have the answers. I don't think any of us claim to all have the answers, but to keep abreast of the issues and the things that are happening and what's going on. Because if we're not paying attention, then our enemies are going to be paying attention, and they're going to be the ones who are kind of taking the reins on which way we're steering, which way we're headed, and that's obviously not something we want. So appreciate everybody who's joining me tonight. Tonight I am joined by Mike, Ruben, and Ian. And quickly we'll go around the board because we are all for our vices here at the New Columbia Movement. So go around the board real quick and talk about your poison. But tonight I am smoking a cigarillo. I was telling Ian before we got on here. Typically when I'm smoking cigars, I only like the Connecticut's. I like the lighter, more mild, creamy cigars. But in honor of Ian joining me tonight, I'm going to be smoking a Maduro. However, I have to do a cigarillo. Otherwise, it's just going to be too much for me. So Macanudo Maduro, and I'm going to go ahead and light that up. Mike, you want to tell us what you got tonight?
You can't go wrong with a Mac, but I don't have one. I have a steaming flagon of 8 o'clock coffee, and I'll pass it to Ian.
I'm just having a La Polina Kill Bill right now. I would have gone with a darker Maduro if I knew I was going to be being joined with one. And I'm keeping it simple with the PBR.
Yeah, I just finished up with Corona for the night, and we'll see what else the night brings. And it's a pleasure to be here with you, gentlemen.
I would have brought a beer, but unfortunately, I already had 2 with dinner, so I think I'm at my limit for the night. I'm gonna be prudent.
Now we got to pray for Sean because he's using a candle lighter.
Oh yeah, no,
holy cats!
We're lighting it real ghetto tonight.
Well, he's got plenty of hair, so if he loses some, he'll still have plenty left. So
I got my flowing mane.
There you go.
Our resident hippie.
I've got this nice butane lighter. I'm not a heretic. I do try to stick with the butane lighters when it comes
solid.
For whatever reason, I think this thing is leaking butane because I will refill it and it'll be out like the next time I go for a light. So it might be time to invest in it.
That style. I've had that style. I don't trust it. The one I have looks it's a good, and I don't have it in front of me. I'm sorry. It's a good quality lighter, but it looks like one of the little fat crickets. And I refill it. It holds a fill forever. It's pretty good.
Yeah, send me that.
Send
me a link for that one.
I'll bring it next month and show it off.
All right, so let's go ahead and jump into it. You let Ruben lead off because the first big piece of news that I don't think anybody missed this month was the flare-up of tensions between Israel and Hamas, or Israel and Palestine, however you want to. This is a conflict that's been going on for a long time, a long time, longer than arguably America has been a country, and many countries have been a country. But it's flaring up again, and there's a lot of nuance to this. There's a lot of black and white to this, and I guess I just want to kind of get you guys' take. And there's a lot to talk about with this, so keeping us abreast of all the things and dropping all the Telegram style videos into the chat whenever it first started popping off. What's your thoughts on all this?
Thanks, Sean. Thank you for giving me the opportunity here to speak with you, gentlemen. So let's start off with what's going on in Palestine and Israel, Holy Land. I think one very important thing to start off this conversation with is the importance not to be a reactionary when it comes to this situation. People will show images, say things, give news reports, give political narratives to get audiences to react based on their lower instincts, like seeing blood, seeing carnage, um, ideological, religious perspectives, yada yada yada. Uh, it's very important when as a Westerner, as an American, and a Westerner, to enter this conversation um, without your emotions on your sleeve, because people will try to buy your thoughts, buy your feelings, buy your opinion through swaying your emotions in this conflict. In most cases, if not in all cases, in this conflict, none of these perspectives and narratives that they put out in the news, pro-Israel, pro-Palestine, none of them are uh, convenient or have the best interest of Westerners or America at heart. So when we're able to approach this in this perspective, we are able to have more ownership of how we view and analyze and what position and what role we have in all of this. So given that, um, uh, this whole started on October 7th when Hamas was miraculously or not, uh, quote unquote, was able to breach the border to Israel and conduct this attack um, in retaliation for months and months of strikes on Gaza, blockade, economic stagnation, um, in Gaza. But they also did it in retaliation for what's going on in the West Bank, which have been in the previous months. A lot of expulsions out of Jerusalem for redevelopments. Also, attacks on refugee camps, which still exist inside the West Bank. Refugee towns, which were set up, these shingle communities of people who have been, pushed out of their homes and just created these small little villages, random villages, which now have become towns, but they're still called refugee camps. So in Jenin and Kalandia, Silwa in Jerusalem. These have been communities that have been greatly affected in the West Bank. There's also was the attack during Ramadan of the Israeli army assaulting the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. That happened this year. If you remember, that was around April or March, April, around that time. That was so. This is a constant escalation, and we are fed so much misinformation that it's very delicate and it's not convenient for a Westerner to make reactionary opinions in this case. Um, so there has been provocations by the state of Israel, which is not our friend, which has a noose around America and the West. They feel entitlement and proprietorship over America and the West, and should not be the case. We have politicians who are dual citizenships, constantly being appointed within our government, uh, and that should not be the case. And they hold dual citizenship. That is a big black pill to know that there are people who are in our government with dual citizenships and seem not to have the totality of their interest in actually serving the American people.
You brought up a lot of good
Having
points
said,
there. I was gonna
right,
I was gonna mention something because in the beginning you were talking about what I call like war porn, where it's like they just like flood the news outlets with like all this imagery of blood and gore and guts and stuff. Um, there's like a lot of examples in recent history, stuff that even like Gen Z can reach back and grab of this kind of nonsense being used exactly for the purposes of ginning up a population to be, an advocate of war. There's the whole like trope of like, the Iraqi army was throwing the babies out of the incubators, and of course
yep,
the
in
meme at
Kuwait,
this
you
point,
remember that?
yeah, and
Kuwait,
the, and the,
the
and the
Persian
meme at
Gulf.
this point of like everybody has weapons of mass destruction.
Yep,
I think if we started saying that like the immigrants coming across the southern border were all carrying weapons of mass destruction, they might actually build the wall. But yeah, and so they use this war porn I could go on and on with examples.
Right, right.
The Syrian weapons. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah,
The biological weapons in Syria. Remember that? Yeah.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
I remember it very well, and I remember Kuwait because I was alive then, and it was served up by CNN, which still had something of a reputation in those days. But it was cooked to, you know, sway opinion in favor of the first Gulf War, which was a success or a stalemate, depending on how you looked at it. But what I'm looking at here in Palestine is, and you can call it Palestine, Near East, Levant, whatever, is the fact that yes, there has been conflict for centuries. Certainly, the Ottoman Empire had a lot to going on there, and Jews were persecuted. But we forget, or it's certainly not presented to us, that Christians were also persecuted. It's valuable to remember that several of the large churches of the early centuries were based in the Near East, and it wasn't until, of course, Emperor Constantine put the lid on Catholic persecution that the church really became established in Rome. So there's a legacy, an original legacy of centuries in Palestine. And what strikes me there is a couple of things. One being, this is not a black versus white conflict, in my opinion. It's just black. It's black versus black, or it's just black. Why do I say that? It's Christless. We're being asked as Christians to take sides in a Christless war. And to do that, for anybody to jump in and say, oh, I'm for Israel, I'm for Palestine, as a Christian, that's just evil. You can't take any side but the side of Christ, and you have to bring that perspective if you're going to have an intelligent opinion or be able to engage in an intelligent conversation, because not only does that kind of elevate the tone, but it also forces one to look back in history and to look back on a certain amount of perspective with regard to who's been there, how recent events, by recent I mean the last couple of centuries, have affected what's gone on, the Zionist movement and so forth, and that's very, very important. Otherwise,
Christians today who are being victimized. I
I
we've
mean,
seen several churches have been bombed already.
And we can't even say by whom, because the churches themselves and the damage they've taken have been used as weapons, have been instrumentalized to lay blame at the feet of the Palestinians, to lay blame at the feet of the Israelis. And I just want to say something too about dual citizenship. I think you have to look at it from two perspectives. One, there are literal dual passport carrying citizens, certainly, but we also have to look at where loyalties lie. And with those who have a very strong pro-Israel opinion, and I don't want to get into bashing, but we have to acknowledge that the loyalty of a lot of those people lies outside of the interests of America, and the mainstream media encourage this, not because they're vehement so much because they're vehemently pro-Israel, but because they're vehemently pro-revolution. They'll take Hamas's side to support the revolution. They'll take Israel's side when it's convenient, and that's for various definitions of convenience. It's really scandalous.
I'll do the bashing if you don't want to. I'm happy to call out characters like Ben Shapiro in this case, because I have never seen that man get more.
Ron DeSantis, don't forget him.
I haven't been as abreast with what's going on with Ron DeSantis, but I can speak personally to seeing Ben Shapiro. The man has lost his mind almost. I have never seen. Can you imagine?
Lindsey Graham.
Erdogan was basically drooling over the idea that we were going to get to target Iranian facilities and Iranian-backed militias. I mean, these people are just, watch. I don't know if they're just psychopaths, which is reasonable to assume,
Well,
or
in the
they're just.
case of Graham, I don't know if this is a dated expression. I'd call him a jock sniffer. I mean, I don't think there's a war he wouldn't run away from, but boy, does he love to encourage them.
I mean, you can see. I mean, even Eye Patch McGee down there in Texas, whose name always eludes me, but
Right.
he was
Crenshaw.
he was one of the first to make a tweet about it. It's like, there can be no compromise. He was like, before even Israel, it seemed like had made up their mind. He was like, wipe them out. So these people were just out for blood, and it's like,
Right.
forgive me for being on the side of peace. Even the Israeli foreign minister was up in arms over the fact that the Pope had dared say that we should pray and advocate for peace in the region. It's like, no, these people want blood. But Ian, I want to let you get a word in.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I'd love to touch on that Ron DeSantis thing there for a second, because he has been more pro-Israel than he has been pro-American citizen rights. Within Florida, we had House Bill 269 signed in Israel, which created hate speech laws. If you're to say anything that offends a particular ethnic religious group in Florida, that is now a felony, and you can spend years in prison for that. And that's
which ethnic or religious group has the biggest lobby in the United States?
The Jewish.
Yeah, well, we found out firsthand.
It's not the Catholics. It's not any Christian branch. It's not the Hindus for sure. So
and I'd have to agree with Mike totally there on saying that we can't take one side or the other on this, because this truly is a crisis war. Both the so-called Jews and the Mohammedans had both persecuted Christians for millennia now. They were spitting on nuns. They were saying that Christians should be executed under a Sanhedrin. The Mohammedans have been killing Christians for, since they've existed.
Well, just
so
as long.
It would be nonsensical for any Christian to take either side.
Right. Now, as I was saying in the beginning, and as Sean and Mike added, what I was saying in the beginning is, because we're calling out Israel does not mean we are pro-Palestine, that we are pro-Hamas. As Christians and as a nativist American view, a traditional Western view, a Christian view, we have to understand and untangle this to be able to know how are we going to approach, or what role do we play in all of this. When we untangle that, do we realize that we do not support a modern Zionist state of Israel, and we do not support a modern revolutionary Islamist interpretation of Palestine.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a great point, Ruben, because again, it invites a historical perspective on how the United States has got itself involved in foreign conflicts.
Right.
In my lifetime, although I was a wee tot, there was a president of Vietnam, South Vietnam as it was then, named Diem, who had been opposed, or rather was looking for a way out of the French sphere of influence. He was deemed to be too friendly to the communists, and the CIA decided that was no good. And so two presidents were assassinated in November 1963. The first was Diem of Vietnam, and the other was ours. Whose interests did that serve? Did it serve any Christian interest? Diem was a strong Catholic, and back when that meant maybe a little more than it does now, but he was a strong Catholic. Now go back to the Second World War. Harry Hopkins, as we now know, whether he knew it or not, was the greatest. And Harry Hopkins, of course, was the kind of the power behind the FDR throne. He was the greatest asset that the Soviet Union had in the United States. Whose interest did World War II serve when the United States injected itself in? And we have to start looking at that very critically, particularly in light of what we've seen in our own lifetimes with the Gulf Wars, and then earlier in my lifetime with the Vietnam conflict.
Yeah, you're perfectly on the dot, Mike. You're on the dot. Now, if you couple that with a more historic, cultural, and religious and traditional Western perspective, we have to understand that with accepting when accepting Christ as King and Savior, and the ancient Hebrew Israelite kingdom was destroyed. What came out of all of that interaction of cultures is the marriage between East and West and the mother church, meaning that it is official doctrine that the church is, on the traditional Western perspective, the church is the nation, the kingdom of Israel.
The stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone.
Right. This is the nation. So, in our perspective, from a Christian perspective, it is the nations and peoples that sprung forth from Christendom, from the traditional West, which in actuality is a marriage between East and West. That's where the word Catholic comes from, universal. It is both East and West. It is a marriage of both. That is the new Israel and the tribes of Israel. That's where that's coming from. So when we support this new Zionist concept of Israel, we cannot support it because it's something that does not acknowledge Christ, and we cannot acknowledge them as Israel and their mythos of their mythos of their heritage, because in actuality we are Israel, those who pertain to the Christian faith,
That's a
not
super
an
important
external
point.
people.
That's
Not
an
an
excellent
external,
Point.
right?
Because
We're
we
not an
just
external
posted
people,
something. We just
right?
posted something recently, and it was, I think, by Classical Theist on Twitter, maybe. And I'm not going to get it exactly right, but he was posting a quote from Netanyahu, basically, where he was talking about Israel, saying, "We are the people of light, pushing back against the darkness, or fighting back against the people of darkness." And Classical Theist basically brought up the point and said, when you realize that they view that in an ethnocentric lens, and we Christians, Catholics view that in in the light of the body of Christ,
Right.
universality lens, you realize how diametrically opposed we are. Which is why I get so riled up when I see this like undying loyalty to Israel, or the idea of Israel. It's a completely anti-Christian concept to put these guys on a pedestal above Christianity.
Really
Right,
is.
and this is where the old generation does not understand, because they were indoctrinated in the new religion, in not a new religion, but a new mindset, a new mentality, a new ideology that was ushered in somewhere around after the Second World War, and specifically in America and the Western countries in Western Europe and whatever, is this new mentality of secularism, which basically reinterpreted our faith, reinterpreted the traditional notions of Western society, reinterpreted everything to fit a new, just a new concept to fit somebody else's needs, and that somebody or that something, I personally am not going to put a name to it right now, but it's not serving to Western people and to the traditions and faith of Western nations and of the United States.
That's right, Ruben. And well, the temptation is there to slap a label on it. I know all
Right,
of us have it. The
right,
fact is, it's bigger than any label, and yet its source, we know what its source is, and its source is from hell. I mean, that's
right.
Yeah.
Right. So after the 1950s, everything was reinterpreted, and now you have this whole two generations, or two or three generations of American adults who have been raised and indoctrinated in that state of mind and reference, that they've created new religions, new faiths, new politics that have completely turned the orientation of what should be the interest and prosperity of our nation and of Western interests.
And I think you brought up a really great point there too, bringing up the fact that we are the new Israel and not the so-called Jews, because that itself is in the scriptures. If they were the children of Abraham, they would have done what Abraham had did and loved God, not turned their back on God and rejected him. And no good Catholic can support Israel either. If you were to just read any of the papal encyclicals, if you look at the Council of Florence, which is ex cathedra, there is no salvation for the Jews until they turn to Christ, because to reject Christ is to reject all of God.
They have a storied history with not exactly being the greatest ally that we're told they are. So
Right.
I don't want to spend too much
Not
time
exactly.
yeah, I don't want to spend too much more time on this topic, but
At the same time,
before
before that, I just want to add, just we're talking about Israel, the same thing. When the nation of the kingdom of Israel was destroyed, the peoples were dispersed, and the whole concept of Judaism was basically died out, and was left was remnants of it, which would later be recollected inside the church, and the church. Um, the Roman governance gave the name to that land in the Western perspective as Palestine, as Palestina, Prima Palestina, or Sidia Palestina. So the word Palestine is actually a Western word. It is a Roman word. It is not an Arabic word. It is not a Muslim word. And we should reappropriate that name as what it is, as a geographic term, not a political term, a geographic term. And it is Western. It is not Arabic or Muslim. Okay.
Fair enough.
yeah, I think it was right around the establishment of the nation of Israel. Palestine was over 50%, Christian. So also something to note as far as, if we want to reach back in time and talk about the nature of the conflict. But real quick, last thing on this, want to go around the board and start with you, Mike. Escalation or containment? What do you think is gonna happen with this as we look forward?
I'm seeing some dots trying to get connected. I think and I don't see that in a good way. I think this is something that is part of a progression. I think we saw it start in the Ukraine. Clearly a conflict that, whatever its roots, and I would put the proximal cause in 2014, but clearly there is a desire to destabilize the centers of Western influence, and involving us in unwinnable wars, unjust wars, is a great way to do that. So do I see containment? Certainly for a time, but I think that the doors of escalation are ready to open at any time. I'm not optimistic.
Ruben?
Just to sum this up, from my perspective, containment, but containment by disassociating and defunding both sides completely. I also,
What do you think's going to happen, not what you want to happen?
that's a different question. What do I think is going to happen? What do I think is going to happen? I think there's going to be not containment. I think there will be an escalation, because there are low key interests that Israel has in appropriating all the rights to gas reserves off the Mediterranean, which pertain also to the Palestinians and Lebanese and Cyprus. They don't want to share. They will continue their onslaught in trying to ethnically cleanse Gaza, and then also see it as a nickel and a dime, as a penny, to redevelop the land and sell it to Jewish millionaires, and redeveloping the land. That's what's going to. I see this is what's going to happen. If hopefully something better happens, but this is what I see what is happening, and these low key interests of Israel, they will continue to do what they're doing, and Palestinians will continue to throw rocks back and throw homemade rockets back, and maybe another country is going to get involved. Who knows?
And containment or escalation?
I mean, I would like containment, but I'm about 100% sure it's going to be escalation, because there's too many people in the White House, whether it's Biden or Trump, that are dual citizens and very, very sympathetic to Israel, who are going to continue to fund them. And then we're going to have a rise of terrorist attacks that we haven't seen for a while. And that's just going to cause another war in the Middle East.
Bingo.
It'd be interesting to see all these very progressive European countries who have spent the last 2 decades importing Islam try to go and support Israel now and see how that goes for him. Yeah, I'm on the escalation train as well. I think you can't do the Wu flu twice, and a war is a very good way to disrupt an election season, which we all should hopefully know by now is upon us. So unfortunately, I think it's going to be escalation. We'll have to see what happens with Hezbollah to the north. I mean, Lebanon is already a very unstable place, and I think
Syria,
activation.
Bashar al-Assad. Don't forget, he is he supports he's friends with Iran and supports Palestine.
So, here's to hoping we're all wrong, though. All right. So, with all the foreign policy shenanigans aside, as always, world's on fire. There's been some domestic things happening in the country, some interesting things happening within the past month. I think most notably, obviously, as we mentioned just a minute ago, we're leading up to election season. So we have that whole political charade to pay attention to, as we do every 4 years. But also, Speaker of the House has been kind of an interesting little scenario lately with vacation of the House for, I think, was I might be. I'm not going to speak on that because I'm not sure if this is like the longest it's been vacated or not. But finally, as of like 2 days ago, we finally got a new guy in. So we'll go around and chit chat about that. But we posted something on social media a couple days ago. And I want to explore this idea in more detail on my own, maybe a separate YouTube video for the channel. But it was a video of the new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. Some of the speech that he gave. It was just a clip. It was a big speech. It was a long speech, so it wasn't the whole thing. Why did he talk a lot about God? Religious. He talks about how the Bible is the foundation for his life, and that's his worldview. He talked to. He even quoted G.K. Chesterton, which that might be a first for me hearing somebody quote G.K. Chesterton in the House or the Senate. He talked about how the inscription of "In God We Trust" was put there because it was a rebellion against Marxism and the ideology of Marxism, which first and foremost and wholly rejects God. And I thought that was commendable. Did I beat my chest and say this is our political savior, this is our Caesar, our Napoleon? No, of course not. And I don't think. I think the rational people out there understood that that's what we were not doing, because one, we constantly say that there is not a political solution, and I think hopefully as Christians we all know not to put our faith in man, but put it in God. But that doesn't mean I don't think that doesn't mean we can't commend people when they say right things, while still recognizing that there is a long way to go. The kind of ideas that we want to push as a whole in society. So we'll explore that a little idea. But Mike, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, sitting here as I am in Washington and having watched this charade unfold has been very, I can say, entertaining. And I think it's going to continue to be entertaining because, among other things, Johnson is a Louisianan. Louisiana has been noted for some colorful and entertaining politics. And Mike Johnson certainly, for all his seriousness about certain issues, I think is going to rattle a few cages. In terms of Chesterton, I had missed the Chesterton quote, frankly, and that's surprising because he identifies, Johnson does, as a evangelical Christian. So I wouldn't think that an Anglo-Catholic would have been the guy he was most interested in, but Chesterton does have a broad reach. I think that what we were really seeing was an attempt by some of those working behind the scenes, at least to give the impression that the uniparty has opposition, and that I think is as big a theme of the speaker race as anything. For years, and I'm going to say decades, there's been a tacit acceptance in both the House and the Senate that as vehement as the disagreements can get between Democrats and Republicans, there's a tacit understanding that you don't color outside a certain set of very broad lines, those specifically having to do with the centralization of federal power, and more to the point, the increasing centralization of power around the globe. And there's an undercurrent. We saw that defeated in the candidate before Johnson. There's a current that says, no, we're not going to accept this. We think we really need to speak first for America, and then ultimately, of course, for our communities on the natural level. And then, at least through my lenses, of course, I'm always going to pitch for the social reign of Christ the King. That said, Johnson is a little bit worrisome in that he tried to set himself apart, but the minute he got in, he started trying to reassure people, "Oh, Israel is our friend. Oh, we're not gonna rock the boat there." And I think that maybe at least perceived as a short-term political solution, because around the globe, the media have been talking about a governance crisis in the U.S., which is absolutely true. But whether that kind of appeasement is going to work in the long run, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, and I'm certainly not going to throw my weight behind a guy who I haven't seen or know a whole lot about him. I'm hopeful to see what he is going to do, but obviously, very first thing he did was he threw money at Israel. So, but again, I mean, that's like the default. We just spent 20 minutes talking about how we've got a third of our political leaders who are basically a third is an exaggeration, but we got a ton of political leaders who are basically dual citizens to Israel. Support for Israel is the default position. We've been giving money to Israel since Israel existed as a country. So to completely just throw the baby out with the bathwater on that, I think is a little short-sighted. But also I understand people's skepticism and not wanting to get rah-rah about the guy while we wait and see what he does. He was very adamant. They say, I don't know if he was or not, but they say he was one of the leaders behind the pushing the election stuff, saying that
Yeah, he was a leader in the challenge of the results of the 2020 election.
Oh,
And
don't say that on YouTube. We're gonna have to
well, we'll have
the rigged. Man, how do I twist
you
this?
you you can you can sanitize it later.
Yeah.
But also, he called, I believe, this past summer for the impeachment of Joe Biden. So he will be lightning rod in both those respects.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's got a commendable record, but we'll see what he does going forward. I just don't want to get people like it drives me nuts, and I don't want people to get locked into this binary of like if they don't check every single box for you, then it's just like throw your hands up, like he's not our guy, forget about it. It's like those people, because they're the ones who say, there's no political solution. It's like, yeah, but by you just completely abdicating the responsibility of fixing our hierarchy and our institution, what that tells me in your actions is that you actually value a political solution way more than any of us do. Because I can sit there and say, the guy's not great. He's not exactly what I want him to be, but look, he's a step in the right direction. I couldn't imagine a guy like this or a guy like the names are going to blank on me now because I'm trying to pull them up in my head. But some of these very good Republicans that we have in as elected officials now, we would have never had during the Romney era, right?
Right.
And
No,
that's
and I think we just need to keep something in mind about 2016 too. I don't like Trump. I didn't vote for him in 16. I voted third party, but I understand why people did vote for him who were not totally in the tank for Trump. He was running against Hillary Clinton, and he kept her out of office.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that happens in politics, and it's going to go on happening.
Yeah. So if you're looking for the perfect political solution, you go ahead, just wipe your hands clean now because you're never going to get it. Yeah. And so these guys who are like, well, he didn't do this or he doesn't do that, or he thinks this way or he thinks that. It's like, fine, continue to push on those points, but don't abdicate responsibility for, it's really a carrot and stick method of trying to encourage the types of leaders that we want to see, right? Because what happens is if you're ready to just completely abdicate politics, if you're ready to completely abdicate really what it is authority, anti-authority, well, guess who's not going to abdicate it? Your political enemies, the left, the Marxists, the communists, the Satanists, the whoever. They're very happy to take power and control and authority over the institutions and immediately turn those institutions against you and weaponize them. That's exactly what's been happening. I mean, it's been happening for what, however many decades now. It's how we've gotten into this position now. And so if you're so willing to just wipe your hands clean of it, then don't be surprised when they've got you proverbially facing the wall one day, because you decided not to, I don't want to say play the game because it's not a game, but you decided that authority wasn't important. Really what it is, it's a libertarian and it's a Marxist view. You have this belief, even though you drape yourself in this right-wing ideology, you have this belief that somehow the proletariat are going to rise up and they're going to be the real solution. And there's always going to be an element to that, but come on, authority, hierarchy. This is a consistent thing throughout our history. You find me an example of of one of these, these passive communal societies that's become a great power and has created great conditions, both physically and spiritually, for people. You're not going to find it. The best example you have, what you're talking about, is the French Revolution, and that was pretty barbaric, if you ask me.
A little. I would recommend for offline reading Nima Parvini's The Populist Delusion.
I have that on my reading list. Actually, I have not read it yet. But yeah,
keep it on there.
Yeah, I also encourage people. I'm not going to consider myself an expert on this, but I've heard some ideas out of what they call Italian elitism theory, or Italian elite theory. Has some interesting ideas in there too. Don't put your faith in political solutions 100%, obviously, but let's also not forget that there is real authority in the civil powers, and they all have a role to play under the ultimate hierarchy and authority of God. And that's just something I wanted to interject. Again, I'm not trying to beat my chest or rise up and defend some guy that I don't know too much about. I just don't want us to get thrown into this chaos of of never being satisfied. Politics is like steering a ship. And I think, if we look at the past 2 decades, Republican Party has come a long way, and we still have a long way to go. And again, I say Republican Party as if like we're all Republicans here. I'm generally speaking, we're talking about the right wing. Republican Party, you could throw those terms around. I don't care about this. The truth is what we're talking about. The people who advocate for the truth. So if your policy is you want somebody who doesn't support Israel, throw your weight behind Ilhan Omar, go find some Hamas guy to run for office. I mean, those, in my opinion, those are your options. But yeah, what do you guys have on that?
I definitely have to agree with you that those people that say, "Oh, there's absolutely no political solution, we just shouldn't vote at all," are undisciplined, since they won't submit to authority even when within a moral context. And they're slaves to their moods. They want to believe all these things, but they don't want to actually put anything into action. And sure, there's not a perfect political solution, because the perfect solution is to fix what's happening in the church, and that'll fix the rest of the world. Because the state of the church is reflected in the world, not the other way around.
Yeah, no, that's real. I mean, I was recently doing a little tour of the Northeast New England area, and you want to talk, I mean, Catholic, Protestant, maybe not Orthodox, I don't know about them so much, but Christian churches alike, I mean, they're just empty. And that's a good case scenario. Bad case scenario, you have like the one I saw in Buffalo, which was turned into a art studio that's like run by a lesbian or something like that. And this is the state of the church. And again, not to get too delved into this topic, but when the church, if all the church is offering you is the world with extra steps, that's not going to entice a lot of people. And that's why the church really has to get back to offering people a holistic spiritual solution outside of the world. And there's this phrase that I think a lot of people are familiar with, is "so goes the church, goes the world." So when we talk about abdicating responsibility, I think when the church, the leaders of the church, and the community and the families of the church, when they abdicate their responsibility for pushing their values in the world, then it shouldn't be a surprise when Satan's values are then instituted into power and pushed onto you. Anything else on Mike Johnson? Mike, I chose your name. Does that give you some hope? You both named Mike.
Yeah, I mean, there you go. The Mike revolution is underway, and it will be televised.
Mike nationalism.
Yeah.
Like my colleague here said, and you have reiterated too, Sean, there is no direct, I would say, obviously there's no direct political solution. This does not mean that we have to disengage from politics altogether. There's always going to be something to work for, someone that can hold a key position to, at the very least, buy time, and not let evil take root. So
yeah,
something to be done.
yeah, and I think that's a great point, and it can be reflected in one's sphere of influence, however large or small. In the family rosary is becoming a thing, I think. and I'll speak to that later when we talk about white pills. The realization is, as Sean alludes, what's going on in the church. But more to the point, it's really a question of opinion and complaint versus substantive action. Some priest or bishop, I forget who, this week made a comment about clerical vestments and being terrible. Fancy clerical vestments are awful and they're a reflection of clericalism and blah. And I looked at that and I said, oh, he's at it again. And I said, what the hell? I got a hold of a priest friend of mine. I said, do you need any new vestments? Well, it turns out he does. He's young and he doesn't have many. And Camarelli got a little extra business. So anytime you're disgruntled or discontented, think about what you can do, be the scale ever so small.
And one thing that said in that speech is that believes that God is in their position of authority there for a reason. And so really the best thing you can do is rather than say, praying on their downfall, pray for their success, right? That's a pride thing. If you want somebody to fail because you want to be right about your presuppositions about them, who's that going to benefit besides your pride? I mean, that's not a good scenario for me or for you or anybody. So
it's going to benefit that guy. That's not who we're for.
You're pointing to Ruben on the screen, just so you know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, sorry, bro.
Yeah, we don't want to benefit Ruben, that's for sure.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, it's a good point. Pray for their success, and then and also prayer and action work for their success too. Speaker Johnson's going to be third in line for the president. Presidential elections are fast approaching. I think they'll be here. They'll be here before we know it. Bad news that's probably going to upset a lot of you, but I just have to share it with you anyway. Mike Pence dropped out today.
Oh, man.
So we're doomed.
Amen.
That's it. The
best chance at saving this nation is now.
I'm moving to Canada.
Oh.
What do you guys make of this race in general? I mean, well, let's stick to the right wing ticket of things. Trump is clearly the candidate, but what do you make of the political charade right now?
I mean, Trump is so far ahead of any other conservative that it's not even really much of a race. He hasn't gone to any of the debates and is still destroying them and getting more views on Twitter with Tucker Carlson than any of the debates have ever gotten.
And yeah, that really that reflects a splintering on the right between the politics as usual being 50 years ago usual, and the politics of disruption, which we got with Trump. And there's a lot of support for the politics of disruption. People found, and here again, the populist delusion. The fact is, without a Trump, would have gone the way of the Tea Party. There wouldn't have been any real action. With Trump, people have a champion, and that's why people are going to vote for him, because they feel that they were denied in 2020, and they're going to keep pushing behind Trump until either he wins or something else happens. And the chances of the latter are as great, I think, as the uncertainty of what that might be, which are both pretty high.
Yeah, I would agree. This election is a complete political charade. It is an embarrassment to our nation and to our legacy as a nation. It is completely departed from any sense of reality. It is not real. Anything that's coming from particularly from the left, from the Democrat Party, that's basically non-existent at this point. And the Republican Party is filled with rhinos, left and right, all over the place. We can see that. We can see just little glitters of hope in the Republican Party. But like as you said, I'm not here to support Trump. I'm not here to embellish him in any way, shape, or form. But as I stated before, he is a candidate that most closely aligns with our perspective, a Christian and a more traditional Western perspective on things. He is a businessman. He does care for the business side of things, and most importantly, like I said, even though I don't personally see him as the man, as the champion, as the Messiah or a savior, because that is another thing. He is not a savior and he is not a Messiah. I do see him as an individual that can buy time, and time is crucial.
He's definitely a pragmatist, and certainly a populist. I think he's not somebody who's so embedded in ideology that others would be per se. But he's a very practical person, and he doesn't play the political game. He's an outsider.
Yeah, we've seen that. He has not had any kind of ideological purity. He's been mildly pro-abortion at times. He's been in favor of higher taxes. In fact, 30 years ago, it was he who suggested a wealth tax.
Yeah.
So, whatever he thinks is going to move it together or move the needle without necessarily just bending in the wind with every perceived shift in opinion of the electorate as a whole.
What I think has been most beneficial is that I don't think people look at him a hero ideologue that's going to synthesize us with the truth. But he has been the person to break the perception of the system as we know it. He revolted against it and he won, and you can see, I mean, through these trials and these indictments that he's going through, they are working overtime to punish him for that. Enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of situation here. Certainly it seems like he represents a threat to the system. And we, I think, are very happy to say that the system is not our friend, and we would like to see a better system. Millennial layman that I am, I do have a working theory behind populism and populist characters throughout history, and I think it is a bellwether for something more to come. In the days before Caesar, obviously you had the civil wars and such, but you also had this rise of this political and almost wealthy class, like I think it's the Packard brothers,
Patricians.
The patrician, yeah, they were very, there were some very big populist figures at that time, which was leading to kind of a overturning. I mean, everybody says, Caesar got rid of the Republic. I mean, there was already turning. Caesar was the man who came in and kind of put the final nail in the coffin.
Grabbed it, yeah.
You had, Napoleon figure emerged out of the French Revolution. And we could talk about this for a while, but it seems like there's these kind of strong men, cultural changes that come out of a populist era. And so I'm not making predictions. I'm not, I'm at least smart enough to know that I'm not going to make a prediction and make a fool of myself. I can at least say with some certainty that a populist, and a successful populist at that, is a sign that there might be some change a brewing beyond politics. And again, it goes back to, we just got to pray that change is going in the right direction and continue to work for the fact that, use this time of change and opportunity to advocate for our values as much as we can, and hope that that if we do ever get a Caesar figure, there's somebody who's it's a Constantine type figure, somebody who's going to stop the persecution.
Right.
Speaking.
And at the very least, I will say, again, I'm not trying to make predictions like yourself. I will say that at the very least, we are in transition, and it is important, like we were saying earlier, to engage with an educated perspective, because their transition is inevitable. And anything that isn't dynamic is dying. So it's not to make it look as a negative. Oh, we're changing. Oh, we're this and that. No, things need to be dynamic, to be fluid, to be moving, to be organic, to have a life. It has to be dynamic. So there's a transition. I encourage people to educate themselves, to come closer to the truth, as it pertains to the West, to us Western Christians, traditional Western Christian. Yeah, and just from there, be able to make more meaningful decisions moving forward. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Yeah, and I think we can't overlook the fact that there's an opportunity here to move the needle from disorder back in the direction of order, because there is so much disorder, so much of a void. And part of that restoration of order, I think, is a restoration of the right of reason, of the use of reason to its pride of place in the natural realm. I am I get some pushback, but I maintain as a Catholic that the Catholic faith is the only reasonable faith. It never shies from reason. It understands what reason can do. It reasons out its conclusions. It understands what reason cannot do. And all other Christian denominations derive, such as they have, anything resembling Christianity from that commitment of the Catholic Church to the right use of reason. As that becomes something that people crave, we have the opportunity to inject reasonable evaluations with perspective, and really to instantiate the social reign of Christ the King, at least on a level of discussion and opinion, and I hope soon in the direction of action as well.
You know, Jordan Peterson actually says something that I like, which he used to do more often than he does now. But and I think this was him. Maybe I'm misattributing this now. I'm double thinking, but I'll attribute to him, give him some bonus points anyway. The entire structure in our thinking in the West is operating from a default binary that a lot of people don't even realize. The centuries of constructing the Christian West has laid such a solid foundation for the way we perceive the world. People are either moving towards the truth or moving away from the truth. And that's the brilliant and beautiful thing about what, Jesus coming down to earth brought us, and the establishment of Christendom and the proliferation of Christianity throughout the world, is we now have this very clear binary. And this is something that I say can be perceived as a white pill, especially when you look in our day and our era. Is like, it's never been so clear where the battle lines are drawn. So the people who are revolting, who are pushing back, who are trying to disrupt the order, they're still operating in that binary. They believe they're pushing for something new and magical and progressive or whatever it is. But the reality is they're working as the inversion of the truth that was already created and established for us. So I think that's important. And as we see these kind of this old class neoconism die literally like in front of our faces, like what's his name, Mitch McConnell on screen, then I think the white pill hidden in there is that we're gonna get back to that plain binary, and the people who are moving left are gonna move extreme left, and the people who are moving right are gonna move to the extreme right towards truth, hopefully the good truth, and then we'll have our, there'll be some finale that we'll get to witness, but I think that's hopeful to me. So
well, and it points out one of the raison d'etre for the existence of NCM, which is building leaders to fill the leadership void in the arena of truth. And I hope I hope we have great success in doing that.
all right, we've been talking for a while, so I want to wrap this up. And the way I want to start ending these going forward is we'll go do a little roundtable, and we'll talk about a white pill and a black pill for the month. What do you think we should do first, black pill or white pill? I feel like we should end with the white pill.
That's right.
End on a positive note, right?
Right.
We'll get the black pill stuff out of the way. And remember, it's not just a black pill; it's an opportunity for change and an opportunity to to bring about the good. It's an opportunity. So opportunity pill, maybe. We can reframe it.
Sure.
Mike, you wanna start with your
I'll go fast on the black pill, and that is what I've seen going on in California, which previously transpired in Colorado, regarding the attempt not only to encourage the use of the abortion pill, but to prohibit the use of the chemical reversion of the abortion pill. These people are so committed, so fanatical about abortion that they will brook no opposition and allow nothing to stop it. It's something that if there were some way to call timeout and just have everybody sit for 30 minutes and think, how ridiculous is this? Maybe there would be hope. I don't think we can, we can't call timeout. We have to do this on the move. But this is one of those absurdities that we just can't ever stop pointing out and saying, what do you think you're really accomplishing here?
Ruben, white pill, real quick. Or sorry, black pill. Black pill.
Black pill.
The white pill, the black pill is that this month, I believe it was established that England is no longer a majority Christian nation.
And with the black pill, there was also well, I won't get into that. Ian, black pill.
Yeah, well, I guess this is probably a heavier black, not heavier, but pretty heavy black pill. Is 4,000 children died today by abortion. So that is worse than 9/11. Today was worse than 9/11. And so is every single day that abortion is allowed to be legal. 62 million died since Roe v. Wade. That's 10 times the Holocaust.
The Holocaust on a scale that can never be imagined, yet it's happening right in front of our eyes. Recently, I was, as part of my tour on my way out of New England and Northeast, I stopped at the Gettysburg battlefields, and it was perhaps poetic that I was there at the same time that the news headlines were coming out about the fact that they had finally melted down the bronze statue of General Lee, that it had become such a controversy in Charlottesville, Virginia, my home state, many years ago. And there's this picture going around the internet where all that's left is his melting face in this furnace as it's being melted down, and I think being turned into like some kind of art piece, surely some disgusting modern art. I got really emotional on the battlefield, not just because of that, but thinking about the Union soldiers and the Confederate soldiers and, the men and the grit that existed at that time and day in our country. And, I'm listening to the song of the Union, and I'm listening to the song of the Confederacy, and I'm listening to a podcast about the Civil War, and I'm thinking, this country used to mean something. People used to believe in stuff. And it literally brought tears to my eyes to just, I'm even getting emotional now thinking about it, but it just, you don't have that anymore. You don't have people who are willing to go and die on a battlefield for something that they believe in. And that sucks. That really sucks. So I want to live in a world where people believe in something and they really believe in it. All right. Enough of that. White pill, Mike.
White pill. I am an usher at my chapel, which we dedicated in 2018, so just a little over 5 years. No, I'm sorry, 2019, just a little over 4 years ago, with one mass on a Sunday, where the pews, which were plastic chairs then, were about half full. We are now up to 3 masses, all full. We are starting to burst the seams, and we are scraping. We're scraping the couch cushions for money to build an addition. People want, they want faith. They don't want football. They don't want hippy dippy liturgical dance. They want faith. And Catholics don't want the latest trend. They want the holy sacrifice, the Mass. That is a tremendous white pill to me.
Ruben, white pill.
White pill is this coming month. Between now and December, 3 of my traditional Roman Catholic friends, close friends, will be getting married.
Awesome.
And that is very great and awesome white pill.
That's awesome. Ian.
This is a pretty exciting white pill here in the Orlando area. The Bishop of Orlando, along with the priest at a local church, has allowed the SSPX of all of Florida to do their confirmations at a diocesan church. So that is a huge step in the right direction and a step towards tradition. And hopefully we will be able to end the blasphemy of communion in the hand and return to tradition.
My white pill for the month is going to be Arizona. Maybe this is setting a low bar for white pills, but Arizona Republicans voted to make it illegal for the Chinese Communist Party to own land in their state, farmland, anything land. If you know anything about what's going on with the Chinese and land ownership in the United States, it's absurd. But at least, again, another step in the right direction. We're moving towards where we need to be. So I'll take it as a white pill.
I'm not sure that's a low bar, but even if it is, a low bar is better than no bar at all.
Oh, it's crazy. It's like, a free nation is letting communists own land, but whatever. Whatever.
Don't bring Larry Fink into it. I'm sorry.
I already did too late. All right. Well, gentlemen, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate you all joining me and having this conversation with me. I couldn't obviously do it without you guys. For everybody who is sitting here and watching or listening, doing whatever you're doing, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Again, just please consider subscribing and following the channel. We're going to try to make this a more regular thing. So monthly roundtables is what we want to do. If you guys have suggestions, things you want to do, bear with us I should say I'm running the show here, so I'll take responsibility, but bear with me as I work out the kinks for this. I'm still figuring out the whole YouTube.
The editorial we.
I am not the YouTube influencer that I make myself out to be, believe it or not. So I'm figuring out all the logistics on the back end, but hopefully this conversation was still of value for you guys who are listening in. Next month, we will have a different cast of characters to come on and chit chat. I'll still be here hosting. And if you have recommendations, people from outside organizations within our sphere you think would be good to come on and have a conversation with us, then do let me know. Drop down in the comments below. I got a couple people in mind already, but I am happy to bring in others to let them share their thoughts. So we'll see what November brings. But yeah, we'll talk about it when that comes. So until then, enjoy your Thanksgiving times with family. And gentlemen, thank you again for being here.
Thank you, Sean. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you for doing it. Pleasure to be here.
All right. Thank you, Sean.